For 300 years, one name echoed across Greece: Sparta. It was a name that meant iron discipline, unmatched courage, and above all, inevitable victory. They were the perfect soldiers, forged in a brutal system from the moment they could walk. Their phalanx was a wall of bronze and muscle, an unstoppable force that had crushed armies and broken empires. From their legendary stand at Thermopylae to their ultimate triumph in the Peloponnesian War, the Spartans were the undisputed masters of land warfare. Facing them in battle was facing death itself. Their reputation alone was a weapon, and for decades, no one could stand against them. But that all changed in a single bloody afternoon. On a dusty plain in Boeotia, the Spartan war machine, the very symbol of Greek military supremacy, wasn't just defeated, it was shattered. The myth of Spartan invincibility died on July 6, 371 BC. This is the story of how one man, a brilliant philosopher general, from the rival city of Thebes, engineered that downfall. A man who dared to think the unthinkable and, in doing so, changed the course of history forever. This is the story of Epaminondas and the Battle of Leuctra. To understand the shockwave that Leuctra sent through the ancient world, you have to understand the titan that was toppled. After the devastating Peloponnesian War ended in 404 BC, Sparta stood alone as the top power, the hegemon of Greece. Their victory over their great rival Athens had left them in a position of unmatched authority, but they didn't wield this authority with a gentle hand. Sparta's power was built on two pillars: its formidable army and a network of alliances called the Peloponnesian League. Through this league, Sparta exerted its will across Greece, often imposing pro-Spartan oligarchies on other city-states and crushing any who dared to defy them. They were the self-appointed guardians of Greece, but to many, their guardianship felt more like tyranny. At the heart of Spartan power was the hoplite. This was a heavy infantryman, equipped with a large shield called an aspis, a bronze helmet, greaves, a chestplate, and a long spear. These soldiers fought shoulder to shoulder in a tight formation known as the phalanx. In a typical Greek battle, two phalanxes would advance and smash into each other in a brutal contest of pushing and stabbing. But the Spartan phalanx was different. While other cities drew their armies from farmers and craftsmen, every Spartan male citizen was a professional soldier from the age of 7. Their entire lives were dedicated to the state and the art of war. This created a level of discipline and lethal efficiency that no other city could match. Now, in a typical Greek battle, commanders put their best troops on the right wing, the position of honor. For the Spartans, this meant their right wing, led by one of their two kings and his 300-strong elite bodyguard, the Hippes, was the most formidable fighting force in the known world. For generations, the formula was simple and terrifyingly effective. The Spartan right would crash into the enemy's left, shatter it, and then wheel inwards to roll up the rest of the line. It was predictable, but for generations, it seemed unstoppable. Thebes, a proud city in the region of Boeotia, had a long and complicated history with Sparta. They had been allies during the Peloponnesian War, but in the years that followed, Spartan arrogance bred Theban resentment. The breaking point came in 382 BC. A Spartan commander, in a brazen act of aggression, seized the Cadmea, the citadel of Thebes, and installed a garrison, basically subjugating the city. For Thebes, this was an unforgivable violation. It was an occupation that would fuel a burning desire for revenge and set the stage for one of history's greatest military upsets. Spartan dominance seemed absolute, but in Thebes, the seeds of rebellion were being sown by two remarkable friends whose combined talents would elevate their city to heights it had never known. They were Pelopidas and Epaminondas. Pelopidas was the man of action. a charismatic and daring aristocrat. In 379 BC, he led a covert operation to infiltrate Thebes, assassinate the pro-Spartan leaders, and expel the hated Spartan garrison. It was an act of incredible bravery that restored Theban independence, but it also put them on a direct collision course with a furious Sparta. If Pelopidas was the soul of the Theban resistance, Epaminondas was its brilliant mind. Epaminondas came from an old but poor aristocratic family. He wasn't a traditional Greek general. He was a student of philosophy and mathematics, a deep thinker who applied intellectual rigor to warfare. Where others saw an unwinnable fight against an invincible foe, Epaminondas saw a puzzle to be solved. He understood that to beat Sparta, Thebes couldn't just be stronger, it had to be smarter. Together, these two men reshaped the Theban state and its army. They championed a new Boeotian League, a confederacy of cities under Theban leadership, designed to counter Spartan power. And they refined Thebes' most potent military asset, the Sacred Band. The Sacred Band of Thebes was an elite unit of 300 hand-picked hoplites, the absolute best soldiers the city had to offer. So what made them unique? Their very composition. The historian Plutarch tells us the band was formed from 150 pairs of male lovers. The idea was revolutionary. A man would fight with more desperation and courage to protect the man he loved, fighting beside him, than he would for glory alone. The bond between them was believed to forge a fighting spirit that no ordinary unit could replicate. This unit was not just a symbol. Under the command of Pelopidas, they were trained as a professional standing force, housed and paid for by the state. They were the city's spearhead, elite shock troops, whose purpose was to break the best the enemy had to offer. As tensions with Sparta reached their peak, the Sacred Band stood ready, a testament to Theban resolve and a critical piece in the revolutionary plan taking shape in the mind of Epaminondas. In 371 BC, a peace conference was held to end the constant warfare in Greece. Sparta demanded that all other city-states sign the treaty individually, while insisting that the Boeotian League be dissolved. Epaminondas, representing Thebes, refused. He argued that if Sparta could sign for its league, Thebes should be able to sign for the Boeotian Confederacy. The Spartan king Agesilaus was enraged. He struck Thebes' name from the treaty, which was basically a declaration of war. For Sparta, this was the perfect opportunity to finally crush Theban arrogance for good. A Spartan army under their other king, Cleombrotus, was already in the field and was ordered to march on Thebes. The Spartan force numbered around 11,000 men, including about 700 elite Spartiate citizens and 1,000 cavalry. The Theban-led Boeotian army was outnumbered, with perhaps only 7,000 hoplites, though they did have a superior cavalry force. On paper, this shouldn't have been a fair fight. The Theban generals themselves were divided, with many arguing that facing Sparta in open battle was suicide. Only the steadfast conviction of Epaminondas carried the vote to fight. On the plain of Leuctra, as the two armies drew up, King Cleombrotus deployed his forces in the traditional way. His Spartan elites, with him at their head, formed the right wing of his phalanx, 12 ranks deep. They were poised to deliver the hammer blow that had won them countless victories. They expected the Thebans to do the same. They were wrong. Epaminondas was about to rewrite the rules of war. He looked at the long Spartan line and understood a fundamental truth. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link, but an army is only as strong as its strongest point. Standard Greek tactics were about a balanced, uniform line. Epaminondas threw that doctrine away. His plan was built on two audacious concepts: concentration of force and the oblique order. First, he took his best troops, the Thebans and the elite Sacred Band, and massed them on his left wing, directly opposite the Spartan king and his elites. But he didn't just match them. He created an overwhelming concentration of power, stacking his left wing to an unheard-of depth of 50 ranks. It was no longer a battle line, it was a human battering ram designed to smash the head of the Spartan snake. Second, to let this hammer strike without the rest of his army being destroyed, he deployed his weaker center and right wing in what's known as an oblique or echelon formation. He held them back, angled away from the Spartan line, ordering them to advance slowly and avoid combat. Think about the gamble here. He was deliberately weakening 2/3 of his own army, all for the hope of achieving overwhelming force on just 1/3 of it. If the Spartans broke through his intentionally weak flank before his own left wing won, his entire army would be surrounded and annihilated. To complete his plan, Epaminondas placed his superior cavalry in front of his phalanx, a departure from the usual practice of placing them on the flanks. Their job was to disrupt the enemy and screen his own infantry's advance. The stage was set for a clash that would pit military tradition against revolutionary genius. The air on the plain of Leuctra grew thick with dust and tension. The Spartan phalanx began its advance, a terrifying spectacle of discipline, marching in an eerie silence broken only by the flutes that kept their rhythm. When they looked at the Theban army, what they saw had to be baffling. The Theban right was distant and hesitant, while the left was a monstrously deep column, something never before seen on a Greek battlefield. The battle began with the cavalry. King Cleombrotus ordered his horsemen forward to break up the Theban formation. It was a disastrous mistake. The Theban cavalry, larger and better trained, decisively routed their Spartan counterparts. The defeated Spartan horsemen fled back toward their own lines, creating confusion just as Cleombrotus was trying to extend his right wing to avoid being outflanked, further disrupting his elite troops. Through the dust and chaos, the Theban hammer fell. Epaminondas led the 50-deep column forward, striking the Spartan right with devastating force. At the very tip of this human spear was Pelopidas and the sacred band. The impact was cataclysmic. The sheer momentum of the Theban column was something the Spartans had never faced. It didn't matter how disciplined they were. A 12-rank phalanx simply couldn't withstand the crushing weight of 50 ranks pushing against it. The front lines were a slaughterhouse. The Spartans fought with legendary courage, but they were being physically driven back and overwhelmed. The crucial moment came when King Cleombrotus himself fell, mortally wounded. The death of the king sent a shockwave of despair through the Spartan ranks. Their leader was gone, their formation was cracking, and the sacred band was cutting a bloody path through their most elite warriors. The Spartan right wing, the anchor of their army and the symbol of their power for centuries, broke. The soldiers, men taught that retreat was the ultimate dishonor, turned and fled. The sight of the invincible Spartiates running for their lives shattered the morale of their allies. Epaminondas, in a display of superb control, wheeled his victorious column right, tearing into the exposed flank of the allied line. The battle turned into a rout. When the dust settled, the scale of the Theban victory was staggering. Nearly 1,000 Peloponnesian soldiers lay dead. Among them were 400 of the 700 elite Spartan citizens who had marched into battle. It was a catastrophic blow from which Sparta's citizen body would never recover. In a final humiliating admission of defeat, the surviving Spartan commanders requested a truce to collect their dead, an act that publicly acknowledged their loss. The news from Leuctra spread like wildfire, carrying a message that was almost impossible to believe. Sparta had been beaten, not just held to a stalemate, but decisively crushed on the field of battle. The victory was so complete, so utterly devastating, that it permanently altered the balance of power in Greece. The immediate consequence was the collapse of Spartan supremacy. The aura of invincibility that had been their most potent weapon was gone, shattered in a single afternoon. Suddenly, allies who had followed Sparta out of fear saw their chance for freedom. The Peloponnesian League, the instrument of Spartan control, began to disintegrate. In the years following Leuctra, Epaminondas led multiple invasions deep into Spartan territory. He famously liberated the Messenians, a population enslaved by Sparta for centuries, and established the new city of Messene to ensure their freedom. He weakened Sparta's very foundations, breaking its economic and social structure. The loss of so many citizen soldiers at Leuctra was a wound from which the city-state could never fully heal. Sparta's long reign as the dominant power of Greece was over, forever. Thebes, for a brief, brilliant period, became the new hegemon of Greece. Its rise was as swift as Sparta's fall. Yet the Theban hegemony was tragically short-lived. It depended almost entirely on the genius of its two greatest citizens. After Pelopidas was killed on a campaign and Epaminondas himself fell in battle at Mantinea in 362 BC, Thebes lacked the leadership to maintain its position. His dying words were reportedly, "I have lived long enough, for I die unconquered." The Battle of Leuctra isn't just another battle, it's one of the most important turning points in military history. It was more than a victory for Thebes. It was a triumph of intellect over tradition. Epaminondas didn't just defeat an army, he defeated an idea. The idea that the Spartan way of war was perfect and unbeatable. His innovations, like the concentration of force and the refused flank, were studied for centuries, and they had a very famous student. During Thebes' period of dominance, a young Macedonian prince was held as a political hostage in the city. For 3 years, that prince lived and learned in Thebes, observing its politics and, most importantly, studying the revolutionary military tactics of Epaminondas. That young prince's name? Philip II. Philip would return to Macedonia, reform his own army using the principles he learned from the Theban victory, and perfect them. He would use these tactics to conquer all of Greece, and his son, Alexander the Great, would use them to forge one of the largest empires the world has ever seen. The legacy of that single bloody afternoon on the plains of Leuctra echoed through eternity, passed from a Theban genius to a Macedonian king, and from him to his son who would conquer the world. If you enjoyed this story of tactical genius, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more great battles that shaped our world. And let us know in the comments, what other battle do you think completely changed the art of war? Thanks for watching.